Doncs molt bona tarda a tots. En primer lloc, agrair-vos que hagueu vingut aquí, tant els que esteu aquí presencialment com tota la gent que hi ha online, que realment demostra aquesta consolidació de les jornades sobre patrimoni audiovisual i sonor, que mica en mica desperta l'interès de tot l'àmbit professional a Catalunya. I que són realment el que volíem, que és una aposta de futur, d'anar treballant per trobar espais de compartir i de repensar el futur. Aquesta segona sessió de les jornades està dedicada a la catalogació, que jo vinc una mica del món de la catalogació i per tots els que coneixeu una mica l'arxiu de la Filmoteca, el centre de conservació, pensem que és l'eix vertebrador de tota la col·lecció, és el que ens guia el dia a dia en la gestió de les col·leccions. I precisament per aquesta rellevància que li donem, demana sovint molta reflexió, que ara justament estem al mig d'una migració a una nova base de dades i precisament ens està permetent fer aquesta relectura, aquest repensar per què fem les coses com les fem, per què prioritzem unes coses davant de les altres, i d'alguna manera aquesta catalogació ens explica jo diria que amb dos nivells, no? Tant les jerarquies de poder que es diu avui en dia, o sigui, la societat en la que vivim són reflexes, perquè de vegades en filmoteques la ficció o un llargmetratge sembla que tingui més atenció que els descarts o aquest tipus de coses, o el cinema amateur, el cinema domèstic, o sigui, van parlant tot de quins són les nostres escales de valors. Però per altra també la catalogació, pensar en la catalogació és els fonaments del futur, no? És on se sustenta la col·lecció. Sense la catalogació no hi tenim accés i llavors per això és com realment les estructures. I fa que puguin arribar a ser un ecosistema viu i sostenible, perquè les oportunitats que ofereixen avui en dia les bases de dades, sempre que normalment estiguin recolzades amb estàndards i sistemes rigorosos d'entrar les dades, ens obren l'oportunitat a interoperabilitat, a espais una mica de vegades que penso que no són ni imaginats, no? Amb la intel·ligència artificial que avui parlàvem. Llavors, per tant, la catalogació de vegades és un tema que se'ns fa difícil, sobretot els que són de fora, el compartir aquesta passió per la catalogació, i que veureu que els meus companys la tenen en el centre de conservació, però que és realment imprescindible en la nostra gestió del dia a dia de les col·leccions fílmiques. Per parlar precisament de catalogació, d'aquests fonaments, ens acompanya la doctora Adelheid Hedberger, a la que vull thank you very much indeed for your presence, and it's an honor and a privilege. Amb ella vam coincidir en un projecte Media Cities europeu que precisament volia forçar-nos a pensar els arxius juntament amb universitats i centres de recerca sobre eines per treballar, indexar i conèixer millor les nostres pel·lícules. El projecte encara està a internet, el podeu consultar, no va reeixir però sí que ens va permetre molta reflexió. Ella aleshores estava al Filmmuseum de Viena, que és una institució de referència entre les filmoteques pel seu respecte a l'obra cinematogràfica, per la seva aproximació, i a més ella és llicenciada en biblioteconomia i ciències de la informació, però no només, sinó que també és especialista en cinema rus, en literatura comparada. Això jo crec que li dona aquesta mena de visió molt àmplia del que és l'artefacte cinematogràfic i l'ha animat a despertar l'interès per la visualització de les estructures fílmiques, l'estandardització de les metadades, així com la manera de fer visible el patrimoni fílmic. No fer visible d'una projecció, sinó quan consultes una base de dades, o sigui, què ens està transmetent totes les dades que tenim de vegades de les pel·lícules. Actualment és la sotsdirectora del Departament de Cinema de Film al Bundesarchiv i la seva activitat al capdavant de la Comissió de Catalogació i Documentació de la FIAF, de la Federació Internacional d'Arxius Fílmics, ha reafirmat la seva brillant capacitat per aproximar-nos a la catalogació fílmica. Thank you very much. It's your turn.
Okay. So, hello everyone. I can only guess that Mariona said a lot of nice things about me. I hope she did. She didn't. Please come forward and we have a talk in the break. So, thank you very much for the warm introduction and for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here. And I apologize for speaking English, but I think it wouldn't be a lot of fun if I tried in Catalan, neither for you nor for me. You heard how Mariona introduced me. What she probably didn't say is that I started my professional career as a chemical engineer before I started in the film archives, and I retained a love for data and a love for workflows. And I think a lot you can use when you go into cataloging. Today I'm going to do a very general talk about film cataloging because my esteemed colleagues, Merce and Ignacio, will then go more into the nitty-gritty details of how you really catalog and how you try to do it. I also don't catalog on a daily basis anymore. But cataloging and metadata is the core for me. It's the core of an institution. Without good metadata, we are in the dark, right? We cannot make good decisions about our collections, about our holdings. We cannot talk to our users. So that's fundamental. I think I have a very educated audience today, so I hope this will resonate with you and you don't know everything I will tell you today. And can I just have a show of hands of librarians that are in the room? Okay, so because you will recognize many things that I will talk about from your cataloging practice in the libraries. I will also not talk about technical metadata. This will be on the filmographic level, on the work level. I will also not discuss today also the pitfalls and the problems that we can have with metadata. And we will have, and I hope we will have a discussion about in the coming years about the way we describe our collections, because we always reduce complexity. Right? We always reduce complexity, and this is a problem. And if we don't catalog things, they are not visible, and that's also a problem. What you need to describe a film? Yeah, probably not a lot, right? This is about disambiguation. How can we define that you talk about a film and I talk about the same film? You don't need a lot of core elements. I'll come back to that later. But let me start with this. This is something that I like to put usually in front of people. I think it's something that we can all relate to, whether we are librarians, catalogers, researchers, or just basically anyone. This is from a book that has nothing to do with cataloging, but I always give, in my cataloging training, I give people the chapter 6 from his book, because he talks as a non-cataloger about cataloging. And I hope you can relate to this quote, right? The amount of data that can be conjured from any given thing is almost limitless. If I put a stone here in front of you, I guess we would probably, have a lot of things that would describe the same way, but there would be things that you would describe that I wouldn't describe. So cataloging is about reducing information and about picking things that we think are relevant. And what this is what you can find in your own cataloging rules. This is your own cataloging handbook that you're writing in your institution. And I hope you have one, because otherwise we will have very different descriptions. Coming back to the core elements. Core elements help to battle with this here, right? If we have an understanding of what we think is most important and what our resources allow, because we could have a very ambitious plan, right? We would want to record a lot of metadata, but I don't know how many people you have in your institutions that can dedicate time to this, right? Maybe not a lot. So you have to make compromises. So for a film, I said before, we don't need so many core elements to describe a film and to make sure that we're talking about the same film. So this is already something from the Fear of Cataloging manual. I will show you the image then later, but you need a title, need a country of reference, a year of reference, and I haven't really marked here is probably the director or a production company. And I think then we're good, right? This is, I think, already basically enough. And there are a lot of problems already here, right? Country of reference, year of reference. Institutions might. This is from the German Filmportal. It's where the national cinema is recorded. This is has nothing to do with the Bundesarchiv. And I don't know if you have something like this in Spain. I don't know who writes your national filmography. Doesn't have to be a film institution, but can be. But this is where you go if you want to find out about a Spanish film. Right? So I would like to point you to here. There's the title. Okay, original title. Germany. Okay. Needless to say, we have a lot of different Germanys, right? I don't know the Spanish situation like 100%, but countries always don't stay the same. So we have a way of working with this, but it's still I think national cinema is something we could also discuss, right? It's not so easy, right? It's not so banal, right? When we would go into this discussion. But anyway, so Germany. And then we have 1997, 1998. I said year of reference. So what is this? It doesn't really say here, right? Is it the year of release? Is it the year of production? Right? We should always be very clear about what year we're talking about. And if you take a scholarly article and the way films are referenced, many times it's also not clear, do they reference the year of production or the year of release, right? And I think this could be a lot more explicit. And it depends what the archive themselves deems more important. In our institution, we have for a long time catalogued the year of production. In Vienna, where I used before, it was always the year of release because we were very cinema-oriented. We had our own cinema, and in the catalog, we always would give the year of release because this was when the film came to life, right? And so I had to really get accustomed to this idea of that you catalog the year of production, and I don't know how much information you actually got about the year of production, right? I many times don't know, but you could have, for example, as we, a lot of censorship records, and that could give you a clue. So it's very much about your institutional customs. So this is another example, this time from the BFI, but I think this will look quite familiar to you. I think many archives, film archives, do exactly what I've now been talking about. It's very small. I don't know if you can read it in the background. I'll read it to you. We have something here. Here it says title, child, and then it says original in brackets. This is very helpful because it gives us a clue that this is the original title, because we could have a lot of different title types, right? I'll come back to this later, right? We have a date, and here it says release. That's also very helpful because I know that they have cataloged the release year. So, credits. I don't know if you can see this really well, but it can become very challenging. I think this is from Black Panther, but I took just anything. Take any new production that has a lot of CGI, that has a lot of animators or whatever. Credits from this silent area and credits from actual production, recent production, can look really, really different. And so what do we do with this? Do we need to catalog them all? I don't think so. I really don't hope you have to manually do this. But it could be that it's important for you. It could be like, for example, I know the BFI, they have to also record all the recent production, and then they are challenged, they're faced with the challenge of what do they do with this here, right? So, as I said before, you can have more or less metadata than the core elements depending on the resources and requirements of your institutions. So don't worry, right, if you go for a very skeleton entry in your database, right? And we can also maybe later talk about why this is not necessarily a problem. I think with filmographic information, you can decide for core elements. When it comes to item information, and by item information, I mean the film reel that you have and only you probably don't want to compromise so much. You want to describe this element so that everyone can understand what you have. Right? I mentioned before title type. I don't know if you're familiar with this concept. Right? A film can have many titles. It can be the original title in the original language. This is usually what we go for. This is how we find a film. But you can have a release print in your Spanish version, right? You can have an English film in a Spanish dubbed version. So, and this film usually has a Spanish title, right? And so you can give the Spanish title, but you would want to give it alternative as a title type so that people can understand this is not the original title. You can have an amateur film, for example, and on the can and on the film there is no title. What do you do in this case? Well, you invent a title, right? You can do it, it's not a problem, right? And how you do it there, I hope you have good cataloging rules available or created in your own institution so that not everyone just goes overboard with creativity, but you have a kind of sense of how long this title should be and how telling it should be, that you can understand this is an amateur film and what's on it, right? because just amateur film will not really give you a good indication of what's in the film, right? You want to add a bit more information. But you want to make clear that this is an archive title. There are different, there's different terminology, but it basically, given title, supplied title, and of course in your own languages, but it always is the same. You indicate that you have thought about this title, right? Here it says device title, you see? And then, you know, there's a whole other topic about transliteration. I hope you understand what transliteration is, right? It is the way that from a different alphabet you Latinize the title. And just to say that I'm a Slavicist, so I have very strong feelings about transliteration and how it's done properly. If we now, for example, look at the Ukrainian situation, right, the war in Ukraine, there's a talk about decolonizing the archives also with a relation to Ukrainian films and actors. And in order to do that, we should acknowledge that the Ukrainian alphabet has a different transliteration into Latin than the Russian alphabet. So currently we are writing a best practice document in the Cataloging Commission to help film archives that have Ukrainian films, how they should go about this. Yeah? Just to let you know that also the way you transliterate, you know, there is a thinking behind it, right? There is a decision you make. And of all these titles, you can have all these titles in your database, you will choose a preferred title. You will choose the title that will be online. And this is your political statement, right? This is your statement, because this is what the people will see, right? This is what you have chosen to be the preferred one. So I guess this is, I hope, if you have followed me so far, this is quite understandable. So, of course, you could also have a situation that your film reel, has a different title than the original title, but it is the same film, right? It could be a spelling mistake, right? It could be anything. Also recorded. You also have a title on the item, right? Collector's title. So that's just another probably variation of what I said before. So use any label with the title that's stuck on the container or the item. You know, record everything that you can find, but try to find the original title as well. So that's a lot of text, right? This is mainly applies to your own rules. For example, there has been a long tradition of how to separate, like visually in the database, that this is an original title, and many times we have used upper cases, right? So that the original title was really there in upper cases, right? It comes, I think, a bit from a time where I don't know, computers weren't so powerful, and we had to, you know, make these rules for comma, 3 letters, dot, and so forth. It's not like that anymore. We have a lot more space in our fields, but many still stick to this. This is totally up to you, right? But the important thing is this here, add any other release titles or translations as alternative titles, right? You don't have to give just one. It will also help people find your films, right? So, I've said this before, country of reference, year of reference, it can be problematic, right? It is, again, you have to make a decision about what you put there. And I just want to say that it probably used to be a bit easier, but your typical European-funded production has probably like 20 countries. And the production company doesn't even have to be in one of these countries. So I just want to put it out to you without, you know, discussing it further. There's this term of national cinema can be challenged, right? The way somebody's a Spanish director but is working in America and all that. So, oh, even more. No, we had this before. Oh, thank God. So, cast and credits. I gave you a slide before about that it can be quite crowded, right? It can be a lot of people working on this. Here it says, take this information from the film itself and secondary sources. This is the important part here. I don't know how you catalog. I think we catalog typically a lot with secondary sources. So secondary sources is, for example, the website that I showed you before. Many times and I'm sure it's different with you because you spend a lot of time and diligence into cataloging, you catalog from the item, the primary source, right? As it should be done, I think, right? But sometimes we don't have the time, and there may be different setups, right? Many times catalogers are separated from the films, right? It doesn't always have to be the same person, right? But it is problematic if you only use secondary sources. I mean, we do it, right? We copy paste film information from, I don't know, I don't want to say IMDb. Let's say Wikidata, let's say something that we probably like a bit better, but anyway, it happens all the time, and I've done it a lot myself. I'll give you another, so this is not bad, but if you can, keep both. If your database can give you the opportunity to differentiate secondary sources information from primary object information. So I'll give you another example. I do a lot of copyright research. For me, it's only relevant what's on the film itself, right? And then our catalogers take information from, and this is like pre-1945 German films, right, where you don't really find a lot of information. So your print is the thing, right? This is where you get the information from. Yet we do have secondary sources. We also have production records, right, where people claim they were in the film, right? But for me, I only need to know what's on the film itself, yeah. So, and if I look then in the database, I find all sorts of information there, but not the thing that I'm interested in. So, I need to know what's on the film. So find a way to differentiate, to reference your information, even for something as banal as casting credits, right? It's not banal at all. So, I'm not sure if I need to talk to this audience here about authority records, but anyone here who had not heard of authority records? Everyone? Okay, good, then forget what I'm, listen to me and then forget immediately what you've heard because you know it all. So, of course, you want to make sure that the person you talk about and is related to the film is not another person with the same name, right? And many databases provide an interface where you can have, you click on a name and then another window opens and you have all the information in order to disambiguate this person, right? So, in my experience, there are surprisingly few actually really, exact names, like same names. So it's difficult to find an example, so this is one of them, but there are not so many more. I don't know. I have not encountered a lot. The problem is rather if you have names that are not so well known, right? For example, I don't know, just historical figures maybe, or people in a film, right? Where you will not find a lot of information about, right? Or abbreviations, right? A. I don't know, Smith or something. So that's then difficult. But in any case, you have a lot of, opportunity here to disambiguate. I also know that for many archives, it's a challenge. I mean, gender, a whole other difficult topic. I can just tell you that I'm getting asked so much about metadata information now of people that want to do research on female filmmakers. If I don't have this information, I cannot give them any. Or I will give them, I don't know, the whole bunch, and then they try to figure out who is male and female here. Or birth date and death date. This is already, you have to put a lot of work into recording this, and the question is, do you really have to do it? And are there not in the future more clever ways to connect our data sources? That I can link to biographical data, for example, census information, and I don't have to have this information here in my database. So, and the same, of course, you do with your film titles, right? Also have a separate window with information about your film title, and then you can separate that. Right? Authority control, we have identifiers that can help us do that. I don't know if in Spain you have an instance that creates unique identifiers for film works or people. In Germany, it's the National Library that does that. So many times libraries do that because they have a lot more experience and a longer tradition of authority records. But there are interesting new identifiers for films. So you know VIAF, right? VIAF is for people. Right? The GND is the German authority records. The overlap with film is like only 20%. So they are not, at this point, really useful for us. But hopefully we can work together and increase that. You probably have heard of IDA and ISAN. These come from a more production side. ISAN comes with a cost, so it's also not feasible for many institutions. I also don't know of many who integrate IDA. But my hope, this is why it's marked here, is Wikidata, because these identifiers are free, they're persistent, and they're crowdsourced, something that archivists don't usually like to hear. I still think we should give Wikidata a chance, and we could think about good ways of collaborating. So maybe even FIAF will create identifiers in the future. And if you're asking me now, yeah, but which one should I pick? Then I say all of them. It's not about one identifier or the best identifier. Integrate identifiers as much as you can, and this will help then your machine, right? This is not for you necessarily, right? This in the future will help your machine to link to other data sources. So, standards. How am I for time? Because I'm kind of chatting away here and I don't want to. I still have 20 minutes. Oh, okay. So, now film standards. I love this here, although you cannot see a lot, but I wanted to give you the full image and you can look it up online. So Jen Riley also is writing a lot on metadata, and she collected, and I think visually quite pleasant, collected metadata standards. And this is from 2010, so it could be totally different now. So you see it is sorted here by strictness of standards, so the color is more intense, is stricter, and it's sorted by a domain, community, function, and purpose. And this is probably a bit more useful now. I picked moving images and I picked archives. So the Filmoteca de Catalunya is a film archive, but you could be in an institution like mine where we have a library, we have a big archive, a paper archive. They don't care about the film standard. They have their own standards. So, so it's good to know about, all the standards. And this is exactly, I hope, the effect that it has on you is what it's intending to do, is that there are a lot of standards and you are faced with a decision of what should I pick? Should I pick a standard, or will there come another standard in the next year? I think it's quite useful to look at it and just get an idea of how many standards are around. So, if you ask me, I think you should pick this standard. This is the CEN 15907 for one simple reason, because it's the first standard for film works. We will look at this then later, right? So this is just to give you an idea. And you can see here, this is a conceptual standard, right? It's a conceptual standard. It doesn't tell you a lot. It's very simple, so to say. This was developed by the European Committee for Standardization, and this conceptual standard, where are we? Here, needs an explanation. It needs something to help you work with the standard, and this is what the FIAF Cataloging Commission tried to do and wrote this book here, which is in revision now. And so everyone who wants to read it or has read it, please come and give us feedback, because we want to take from the community the input and try to make it better and workable. Right? So let's go back here. Not everyone is comfortable working with an English manual, and we absolutely acknowledge that. So there were translations made in Spanish, French, German, and Croatian. Why not, right? So if you know of any other translations, please let me know, because I'm very happy to feature them on our website. But the important thing for you is that you can read this manual in Spanish as well. So, just a quick slide. Librarians will recognize the 4-tier structure. It is modeled on Ferber, so FRBR. To any of you that are not familiar with Ferber, you don't have to, but I would just like to let you know that this was a very conscious decision to model the filmographic standard to a library standard in order to get maybe more recognition, to make the interoperability feasible, and to make these two systems speak with each other. Also, it was recognized that film has a lot to do with book publication because it's published works. If you think about archival records, they are unique, right? Digitization aside, but they only exist in your archive. But films exist in many different archives, and they have been published. So this is not really important for you. It's just an overview of what this element set and structures is about. This standard is, I think, like 1.5 pages long of description. Right? It's really not a lot. It's just something that has been put forward to the community. In, I think around 2012, there was the first dissemination event, because you have to understand, when you try to implement a new standard, the community is not going to go, yes, a new standard, I'm ready to change my whole database and, you know, implement something completely new, especially with two additional layers in the middle, right? Because I think most film archives didn't have completely flat records. They had a work and item structure. So they had the work and they had all the items underneath that work. So that was already quite good. But you know, these 2 layers in the middle, first of all, you have to pay someone to do that. And secondly, you have to understand why you need these 2 layers. And you need them because this will allow you for more granularity. Because films are about versions. Films come in a lot of versions. And a 2-tier structure does not allow for that. You can only make a decision if you create a new work or not. But there is a lot of fuzziness in the middle. And especially then when it comes to digital, you can have so many digital derivatives. So when you bung them all under your work, you don't understand anymore how these relate to each other. Right? So this is why I think the standard is a good idea. It still took like 10 years. It's slowly archives are adapting it, are paying money to have maybe a database that comes with the standard. Some write their own databases, like the Czech National Film Archive, and I wish them a lot of success, but it's a lot of effort. Right? I think many have set out to try and do this, to go with this standard, or go with this here to a database developer and say, here, can you create the database for me? And they'll be like, yeah, but this is not a lot of information, right? We need to talk about relationships and all that. So this is no good. So it's a huge undertaking, and film archives is not a huge market for database developers. So we have one model, one database brand around that many use, and I say no more. I'm always asked about this open access, open source database for film cataloging, but I'm really afraid I don't have it. So what does it not define? Like elements for collection management, this does not talk about film loans, conservation activities, acquisition information, provenance, all that is not part of the standard. But you want to record this, of course, right? We do, because we loan a lot of material and we restore a lot. So it doesn't come with value lists, right? Value list, a drop down, right? What should I choose from? Gauge, for example, is it 3516? It does not have that, controlled lists. It didn't have cataloging rules. This is what the FIAF tried to achieve, right? And the cataloging manual does acknowledge that not everyone has the 4 tiers or even 3 tiers. It tries to describe like 1 tier, like completely flat, 2 tiers, 3 tiers, and 4 tiers, right? Yeah, it doesn't have a detailed data model for your system developers. Doesn't have that. So I showed you this before. And now I think it could be useful for you if we go into these elements or this concept, right? So I think cinematographic work, like at the top, you can always look at my t-shirt again, but I don't know if you can. So this is great merchandise. It's from the Czech National Film Archive. But I can't tell you where you get them from because this would be too much advertising now, but I love it. So the work is at the top level, right? And I think you probably can all follow me when I say this has nothing to do with the item yet. This is just the idea. This is the ideal film work, right? So it says here, I think you don't really, I don't need to go into this definition here, but the important part here is it is not just classic film production. The work can also be an amateur film, it can be CCTV footage, it can be anything, right? But it's at the top level. So, works also include trailers, outtakes, excerpts, rushes, unedited footage, gag reels. This is always a bit controversial, I've noticed, right? And I just, for the sake of it, I just want to stick with trailers because this is where usually the most agreement, right? I don't know what you did with your trailers, and I'm not going to go into teasers or all this stuff that is produced nowadays, right? Just the trailers, my recommendation is to keep it as a separate work for one reason. Because, yes, there's a connection with the work, but who made this trailer? I have no idea. It was not Fritz Lang, or maybe, I don't know. But nowadays, it's not the director of the film that sits down and cuts like 3 trailers, right? So put it as a different work, and hopefully you have a database that can create a relationship between these 2 works, right? So if you look for the name of the film, also the trailer will come up, right? And as I said, the rest we can just forget about for the moment because we might have different ideas on that. So, and by the way, you just hear me talking today, but many of these things here are discussed quite fiercely, right? Do we need a variant? Right? The variant is optional. I probably should have said this before, right? In the standard, the work, the manifestation, and the item are a prerequisite, but the variant is optional. And I'm not sure if it was a good idea to put it like this, right? For various reasons. But many have gone with a 3-tier solution, right? Work, manifestation, and item. And, and there were only very few in the beginning that said, no, but I need the variant. And the others were like, I don't understand. Anyway, I think it has changed a bit now. I think the variant is kind of gaining a bit more recognition. It's a very interesting debate. So the variant. Variant means content change in content, right? And you see that it can be tricky, right? So, as a general guideline, let's go to the second part here. Changes that would result in a different content description should be treated as a separate work than a variant, right? Let's go here. I apologize for the color, but I hope you can read it. Minor differences, major differences, right? Major differences, new work. Change of director, new work. Change of year, new work, right? Minor differences, and let's go here. Change in footage, change in textual aspect, change in performance, performers, right? All this we could now spend a lot of time discussing, but I'm just giving you the content of the cataloging manual, right? So, yeah, the determination of a variant requires human analysis, right? in order to even understand, do you need a new variant here? You need to look at your objects. You need to go through everything that you have, and you need to view everything to know if there are minor changes or not, right? If there are 5 minutes missing or not. So you see the problem already, right? You can introduce a CEN standard, but it means you have to go back to your collection, to all of your collection, look at all your elements, and then make educated decisions about where you have a new variant and where you have a new manifestation or a new work, right? So, yeah, it's not always easy to establish what the variants may be. So, therefore, this entity is optional. As I said, probably not a good, not a good reason, right, for making it optional. So, all this becomes a bit more tangible, I think, when we look at 5 minutes. That's okay. Variant types. Work has different types, variants have different types, manifestation have different types. And this helps you to understand. So this is from the CNC, like the fierce battlers for the variant that have now put it into practice. And so this is very good to talk to them, because not many archives have done it. So I could ask them and say, so how are you actually working with the variant? And my colleague Katarina Campoli from the CNC showed me the different types. And I think it gets a bit more tangible here. Right? You have a synchronized version. This is a variant, right? You have a colored version. This is a variant. You have a director's cut. It's a version, new variant, right? Restoration and all that, right? We would need to discuss every case so you can understand it. But I'm just putting this here for your, hopefully for your better understanding, right? Manifestation. So the embodiment of a moving image. So manifestation means change in format. For example, you know, this is again like the theory from the manual, 70 millimeter version, TV version, 35 millimeter version, Super 8 version is different manifestations, right? And all the elements you have, you put underneath this, right? So, also manifestation has types, and these are from the cataloging manual. And you're gonna tell me now, but this look very much like the variant types, right? Yes. It depends very much if you have the variant or not. If you don't have the variant, you have to push a lot of the content changes and the language problems to the manifestation, because you want to make a distinction at some point, right? I hope you're still with me, right? It can become very tricky if you don't have the variant, because the manifestation is very loaded suddenly, right? With content changes and format changes, right? So. And also, film archives produce manifestations or variants themselves, right? We digitize our films, so we have to suddenly, it's not just incoming material, and we look at it like, okay, this is a 35, this is, I know this was the release print from this, and then I put it in my database. No, we scan our films. We make digital derivatives from it. So we have to think about our own production elements, right? And this can be any production or post-production phases of a moving image. So, to give you another example, let's say you have a 35 millimeter vintage print, right? You scan this film, scan it in 4K. So what do? Do you create a new manifestation for the 4K scan and put your DCDM, your DSM, your DCP under this one? Or do you put your scans under the 35 millimeter because you want to retain the connection? Or do you do it like the BFI? Every time you create a MOF file, you create a new manifestation because this goes on the internet, right? So this is the variation that film archives have found to work with the manifestation. And I would say it's not a catastrophe. It's okay, you know, as long as you know what you're doing, right? And then, of course, you can talk to our other colleagues and be like, nah, but you can't do it like this. Again, it's resources. You know, the BFI says, I need to know, I want to know what goes online, and I want to have the manifestation there. we would never do that. We're happy if we can just have this one manifestation and maybe another one if we have time to create it, right? Most of the time when we exchange film data, we do it on a work and an item level, like filmographic information holdings. All the rest in between is the granularity that you need, right? So, and just the item. I think the item is the easiest, right? Everyone knows what the item is. And I can describe it, it's here, it's okay, right? So it can still be tricky, right? We just leave this out for now because we don't have time, just to show you of different solutions, right? That you can have, right? This is the variant here. These are the manifestations, and these are the items underneath it, right? And an example from the CNC. Here you say they have created a variant for missing scenes, and then underneath it you still have a 16 and a 35 millimeter print, and I have no idea what CEX is. They know, right? So probably a digital element. I don't know. Just to give you an idea of how it could look like. And my last slide, and I hope I'm not over time, because this is probably what you do most of the time. You have a VHS in your hand. So what do you do with this now, right? You look at it, right? So if you have a video recording of a 1950s film, is it a home viewing VHS with an official label and a box? Or is it a recording on a blank videotape? Like, you know, we have different eras of digitization, right? We digitized it on VHS, we digitized it on, I don't know, from the 2-inch to MXF and, you know, on betas and all that, right? We are constantly digitizing. So we have a lot of VHSs from our own analog elements, right? Or is it a recording of the TV broadcast? This makes a difference, and it defines where you put it. So in the first case, you link it to a home viewing manifestation because it deserves its own manifestation, right? It was clearly published to be like that. So it's an in-house copy. Then you would link it to the same theatrical manifestation, theatrical for cinema, right? So you have a 35 millimeter print, you've digitized it on VHS, so you put this VHS under this 35 millimeter. Or is it a TV broadcast? Then either you create the TV manifestation, or maybe you have a beta already or whatever, then you put it under this one. Just, I hope this gives you a bit more an idea of that there's no rule as this VHS always goes here, right? You have to understand, look at the element and understand what was the production context, and do you have a reproduction? Is it a reproduction of your element, or is it a new thing, right? We can skip this because my colleagues, I think, will talk about this, and it's not good for you anyway. You can all read it in the catalog manual. And this is my last slide, right? So it's always a team effort. We don't catalog by ourselves. So there are lots of questions when you catalog, especially with the CN 5907. So let's just have not now, but you know, go to colleagues, go to other archives, find people to talk about it, and you know, bounce some ideas around and maybe even fight about it. Okay, that's it. Thanks a lot.
Bueno, doncs per l'última sessió d'avui ens acompanyen l'Anna Forns, la cap de documentació de la Filmoteca, i la... Ens acompanya l'Anna Forns, la cap de documentació de la Filmoteca, de la que depèn la Biblioteca de la Filmoteca, que poder és la part més visible per la majoria de gent, no? I també la Noemi Maia, documentalista a la biblioteca. Elles avui ens expliquen, dintre que estem en el món dels arxius del nostre món, aquests materials que parlàvem, que de vegades dèiem les col·leccions fílmic i no fílmic, i que amb l'Anna sempre dèiem que definir una cosa per lo que no és no ens agradava. Llavors ara hi ha aquesta related materials o related film materials, o sigui, els materials relacionats amb la pel·lícula, no? I llavors des de fa ja no sé ara ja quants anys, des del 2013, hi ha el repositori, que és aquesta finestra per tenir accés a bona part de la col·lecció de la Filmoteca, encara que no siguin pròpiament les pel·lícules.
Hola, bona tarda. M'agradaria parlar en anglès, but my English is not so good, so sorry very much. L'únic que us volia comentar és que jo no sé si coneixeu el funcionament de la Filmoteca, perquè sembla que parlem de l'arxiu de pel·lícules, però també existim la biblioteca amb tota la nostra problemàtica, però que tot el material que tenim en la biblioteca està profundament relacionat amb l'arxiu. Tornem a tenir la mateixa problemàtica de que tenim un pòster, per exemple, i que és obra, és manifestació, ens tornem a plantejar totes les mateixes qüestions que han sortit avui aquí, doncs ens les plantegem a nivell de biblioteca. Però no només a nivell de llibres, sinó a tot el material gràfic o el material que acompanya amb un film, perquè el material bibliogràfic o els llibres, les revistes, més o menys això és fàcil, però ens trobem amb tota la resta de material que tenim a la biblioteca i concretament a la Biblioteca de la Filmoteca, que és moltíssim, que us parlem de cartells, que us parlem de fotografies, que parlem de segells, que parlem, lobby cards, cartelleres, moltíssim material que sempre va lligat a una pel·lícula i que també de la mateixa manera que s'ho plantegen ells, nosaltres també vam començar un dia a parlar de que si era obra, que si no, i ja vam dir, esperem a tenir Axel i allà tornarem a parlar-ho perquè no sabem pas com posar-nos-hi. Aleshores, què hem fet avui? Avui el que us volem presentar o ensenyar-vos és una mica el nostre repositori. El repositori no és una eina de catalogació, sinó que és la finestra a l'exterior, com deia la Mariona, de tot el material que tenim digitalitzat. Hem volgut preservar els materials com totes les biblioteques i aleshores ens vam trobar que començàvem a digitalitzar moltes revistes, pòsters o material gràfic i què fèiem de tot això? Doncs vam crear un repositori i el vam poder ensenyar al món, perquè la veritat és que la part bona, o l'Esteve sempre em diu que li agraeixen molt que una persona de Sud-amèrica o de Nord-amèrica o de qualsevol part del món entri als nostres fons sense haver de venir a la biblioteca. Estàvem convençudes, quan la Noemi ho preparava, que ho ha preparat quasi bé tot ella, que ja coneixeu el repositori. Llavors aquesta vegada no us ensenyarem l'estructura del repositori, sinó la nostra experiència amb aquests 10 anys, què ens hem anat trobant, quines problemàtiques i com hem anat solucionant els problemes. Us passo la Noemi.
Hola a tots. El que comentava l'Anna, que presentar un repositori del 2013 era com una mica estrany. Llavors volíem explicar una mica els reptes que hem tingut durant tot aquest temps, o d'inici també de disseny, i com... I també una mica les estadístiques d'ús i el que ha passat aquests 10 anys. El tenim disponible en línia des del 2013, la plataforma és The Space, ens fa el manteniment al CSUC i tenim això, gairebé 55.000 ítems. L'estructura que tenim... Es veu millor en l'anterior?
Una més?
No, cap enrere, cap enrere. Són comunitats, que és el que té normalment el The Space, i llavors tenim tot el material de premsa, totes les crítiques, tenim tota la part gràfica, tenim una part de llibres digitalitzats. També hem anat afegint coses, amb el cap dels anys vam afegir també els actes de la Filmoteca, a poc els anem afegint, les gravacions dels actes que es fan, de les presentacions, tenim fons personals, també tenim partitures, perquè tenim algun fons de partitures, i moltes revistes, molts números de revistes antigues i digitalitzats.
Perdoneu, enteneu ara quan us deia la gran quantitat de material que té la biblioteca relacionada amb el cinema, que no només són llibres, doncs aquí es veu.
Sí, no, cap pantalla. Això ja està, ja ho hem dit. Per exemple, un exemple és l'arxiu gràfic, que tenim cartelleres, cartells, uns cartells pintats de les façanes que es feien antigament en els cinemes, tenim dibuixos, tenim postals i cromos, tenim els lobby cards, que són, o li diuen també fotocroms, que són un arxiu gràfic així que es posaven als vestíbuls dels cinemes, i tenim programes de mà que es donaven també als cinemes. Llavors, tenim com molta varietat i cadascun normalment està relacionat amb una pel·lícula. Aquest va ser el primer problema que vam tenir perquè el DSpace no ens donava opció de relacionar. Llavors, la solució que ens van donar al CSUC va ser crear una comunitat que era només les fitxes, films, o sigui, com si fos una fitxa del film i aquella comunitat ens feia lligar tota la resta. O sigui, per exemple, aquí es feia una fitxa, això també es donava el problema que la gent es pensava que teníem la pel·lícula, perquè com això és el Mago de Oz, per exemple. Nosaltres tenim només la fitxa del Mago de Oz i d'allà pengen el cartell, després unes presentacions que s'han fet a la Filmo i una crítica, per exemple. També podem tenir fotos, podem tenir més coses. Però clar, el problema que teníem al principi és que com hi havia una comunitat que es deia fitxa film o film, la gent es demanava la pel·lícula. Nosaltres l'únic que no tenim allà són pel·lícules. Que estan a l'arxiu. O sigui, l'únic que no teníem era això, era el que tothom ens demanava. Llavors vam amagar aquesta comunitat. Tot i així, quan veuen el cartell, ens demanen la pel·lícula perquè la vam veure de petits i els fa molta il·lusió, o sigui que encara és una mica complicat. Vam posar fitxa perquè al principi es deia només film, vam posar fitxa film, però encara hi ha algun cas, però cada vegada és menys, com a mínim. Això ho vam solucionar d'aquesta forma, perquè el que més ens interessava era buscar la pel·lícula i que ja sortissin tots els materials que tenim relacionats. Després...
Una mica amb la idea d'obra, enteneu, i tot el que hi hagi que pengi sobre una mateixa pel·lícula que nosaltres puguem tenir a la biblioteca.
Després també volíem penjar molts fons personals i ens passava una mica el mateix. Sí, passo jo, millor. Ens passava una mica el mateix, que l'estructura que havíem fet de comunitats era per tipologia documental sobretot i en un fons personal es barregen les tipologies. Llavors vam crear el fons personal, que era una col·lecció. A veure com explico això. O sigui, nosaltres cada document el posem en la seva tipologia. Si tenim una foto, la posem a la foto, si tenim un cartell, al cartell, i una crítica a la crítica. Però després tenim aquesta comunitat que el que fa és cridar a tots els documents que tenen relació. I això li diuen mapador d'elements en el DSpace. Llavors nosaltres fem el mapatge de totes la foto, el cartell, i així tenim d'un mateix fons, tenim tots els documents relacionats.
Enredem a DSpace.
Sí.
Perquè no estarà en aquesta comunitat o en aquesta col·lecció, sinó que estarà a la col·lecció que toqui per tipologia documental. El que passa és que l'usuari, quan entri, això no ho veurà, perquè li sortirà tot. Ara, si busqués en la comunitat que toca com a tipologia, també li sortiria. O sigui, és com si estigués duplicat.
Com si estigués els dos, però ocupa només l'espai d'un. Això sí, l'espai de disc només és d'un.
Penseu que tot això complica molt el DSpace, perquè com que no és relacional, el vam començar a enredar moltíssim i va arribar un punt en què des del CSUC ens va dir no, pareu, perquè és que no us funcionarà si seguiu fent comunitat de films, comunitat mapant, saps? Complicàvem una mica el tema i vam haver de dir, venir.
I això ens ho vam fer perquè érem els primers o dels primers. Llavors aquí encara tenien ganes de fer coses, de provar. Ara quan li demanem coses ja no, ja està. O sigui, ara ja fa molt de temps que no. I després també li vam posar una altra trava, teníem en el Movidoc, teníem catalogades moltíssimes, 22.000 fotos que clar, no havien estat públiques, o sigui, la idea no era que estiguessin públiques, i vam fer una exportació, però no ens atrevíem a posar-les públiques perquè hi havia spoilers de la pel·li, potser deien aquí quan està morta la senyora o quan l'ha matat no sé què, i clar, no volíem passar això després a internet. O també fotos que no es veien, que estan malament, o fotos familiars. Aquí hi havia aquest cas, em sembla que sí, és un carret d'un rodatge, i al final suposo que els familiars d'algú del rodatge es van fer fotos, però no era ni l'actor ni l'actriu, no era ningú. Llavors aquestes fotos no les hem passat al repositori. Llavors vam crear una altra comunitat per liars del CSUC, que és aquesta de Work in Progress, que només es veu si estàs logat i els usuaris no ho veuen. Llavors això ho anem repassant a poc i es va passant a la col·lecció de foto.
Hem creat com un subrepositori, ho enteneu, amb el que no volem que la gent vegi. Quan això ho validem i ho donem per bo, ho traiem al repositori, que sí que es pot visualitzar des de fora.
I això va ser el que li vam demanar així de primeres. Després volíem explicar una mica les estadístiques d'aquests anys. Aquest és el 2022. Normalment, per ara tenim es mantenen les visites bastant estables, tot i que de tant en tant tenim un pic i no sabem ben bé per què, perquè el problema és que és bastant difícil, o ens és bastant difícil poder separar els vots. I també tenim un pic important ara perquè teletreballem, llavors han pujat el temps d'estada al repositori perquè molts som nosaltres mateixos i no podem separar els nostres IPs. Quan era tot a la feina era més fàcil, però ara és més difícil controlar les IPs nostres. Però bueno, som 9, o sigui, com a molt entrarem 9 persones, no crec que ens pugi tant. I bueno, el perfil d'homes, dones, això és bastant variat, no hi ha res molt important així a dir. També vam veure les vies d'accés al nostre repositori, la majoria és cercant a cercadors, o sigui, Google, suposem, un 47%. Després hi ha un 33% que és per via directa del repositori, per l'adreça, tot i que també ens comentava el nostre company, que amb això és molt acurat, que si tens la privadesa del navegador molt alta, no et surt que han entrat per cerca, llavors sembla que hagin entrat directe. O sigui que aquí tampoc estem del tot segurs si és veritat o no. I després algunes que entren per webs diferents, que també les hem analitzat. La majoria és per la web de la Filmoteca, directament, un 44%, i després està la Wikipedia, en diferents idiomes, i també el Google Scholar. Són com les tres vies d'accés més importants. Després del país de procedència, aquí en aquesta gràfica hem extret Espanya perquè el 69% d'usuaris és Espanya, llavors ens sortia amb el blau molt fort i la resta no es veia la forma, no es veia res. I bueno, bàsicament els principals són Estats Units, França, Mèxic i Holanda, i tenim algun cas així com curiós, que per exemple a Xile hi ha molt poca gent però està molt de temps. No sé si deu tenir uns quants usuaris que consulten molt, però és poc temps de consulta. Després us acabo d'explicar, però quan hi ha moltes coses que no es poden descarregar, llavors s'envia un formulari de petició, i això ho hem estat analitzant per veure quin tipus d'usuaris tenim. El tant per cent més important és investigadors, després hi ha també estudiants, i també tenim una part important de productores i editorials, que ens demanen imatges sobretot per llibres o per alguna producció audiovisual, en un cas més reduït. I després hi ha una part important de particulars, de la part emocional, que és bastant important, el meu avi és aquest actor, o vaig sortir en aquesta pel·li, o l'altre dia ens va escriure un senyor que el seu profe era un nen d'una producció i li feia molta gràcia, li volia regalar fotos d'ell amb un monito, perquè a més era una pel·li bastant dolenta infantil, i volia fer-li la gràcia de regalar o d'ensenyar-li al senyor les fotos d'ell quan tenia 8 anys. Els projectes futurs, com us comentava, ara els de l'UCSUC ens fan poquet cas, o sigui, tenim problemes ara mateix amb els visors que no s'actualitzen i llavors demanar-los moltes coses no ens funciona. Vam començar un projecte de geolocalització de fotografia, sobretot, i ja tenim més de 700 fotos localitzades. En l'ítem es veu el que és la foto i surt una mica el mapa d'on estaria. I llavors això tenia una segona part del projecte, que era un mapa d'Espanya, perquè per ara només hem geolocalitzat Espanya, que s'aniria com ampliant fins a arribar als puntets. Això no hi fa ja 2 anys.
Que ho tindrem la setmana que ve.
Que no arriba. Per ara només tenim la part que tu entres a la foto i veus on està, però no pots veure quines fotos estan a prop o quines fotos s'han fet. No sé jo, la idea és que hauríem de tenir-ho.
La geolocalització ens dona una part curiosa, perquè a vegades identifiques, quan estem identificant, trobar què era aquest carrer o què era aquest poble, ens quedàvem com que hem fet tota aquesta feina i no consta. Fent això aconseguim que la gent pugui situar.
L'exemple que hem posat és la hija del mar i la foto és a l'església de Sant Boi, que també feia gràcia perquè mar no hi havia, o sigui, és a Sant Boi. I se suposa que és un poble de mar. L'altre projecte futur també té a veure amb Acxiu Collections, que no sabem ben bé el projecte, perquè nosaltres ara mateix no tenim base de dades per tot el material gràfic. Acxiu Collections, quan ho provin el 2CR, ho provarem després nosaltres, i hauria de ser la solució. I sembla que ens podria donar també una solució de després poder publicar directament al repositori. No sé si al DSpace o hauríem de fer una altra plataforma. Llavors ens quedem una mica així.
La idea que hem proposat i que de moment creiem que podrà funcionar és que DSpace segueixi sent la finestra cap a l'exterior de tot el material que tinguem a Acxiu. Però bueno, Acxiu primer van ells i després anem nosaltres.
I ells diuen que amb un botó passarem d'un lloc a un altre.
Perquè el que no volem fer és doble catalogació. Volem catalogar Acxiu i que ja es catalogui directament al repositori, perquè no està...
Però, clar, no hem fet proves ni res, no hem arribat a veure res.
A veure si hem fet alguna cosa més.
I un altre projecte així d'última hora que vam tenir era mirant que l'IMDB donava opció de modificar, si veiem malament el cas, per exemple, tu pots demanar que això està malament o comentar que està malament. Doncs hem pensat fer una cosa similar amb les nostres fitxes. Si algú veu incorrecte l'any o veu incorrecte el... Això jo crec que serà fàcil de demanar, d'implementar, que ens puguin modificar, no poder modificar-ho directament, però sí enviar un e-mail dient la correcció.
Hem fet diversos projectes demanant la col·laboració de la gent i sempre han funcionat molt bé. Ens vam plantejar una època de fer que ens ajudessin a identificar fotografies. Ho vam tenir quasi bé tot fet, teníem el nom, ho teníem tot, però al final no va ser viable perquè DSpace és molt estàtic. O sigui, el fet que la gent pogués comentar era molt feixuc i no va quedar bé. Llavors, ara intentarem d'una altra manera
fer-ho potser més senzill.
Sí, perquè a més, quan la gent col·labora, realment no és per tant el que ens puguin arribar a identificar, sinó perquè aconsegueixen realment donar-li molta vida en aquest projecte. I això seria una fita que tenim de cara l'any que ve, a veure si podem.
Després, som recol·lectats per Catalònica, Sirena i Hispana.
Això ens interessa molt, ens interessa molt ser recol·lectats. El problema que tenim ara amb els repositoris, no sé si hi ha gent de Biblioteca de Catalunya, és que ens demanen, per exemple, per Arca revistes. Jo no tinc cap problema amb cedir revistes a Arca, però tot el que jo cedeixo per una base de dades, o per exemple la memòria digital, ja tenim fons en memòria digital, però jo el que vull és que entrin en el meu repositori. Si vaig cedint els meus fons perquè estiguin en altres repositoris, no és ben bé la idea. Llavors preferim ser recol·lectats i que tots els nostres fons es trobin, que no pas... A mi em sap greu dir-los que no, però clar, no cediràs tota la teva feinada perquè siguin uns altres els que s'emportin les entrades. O sigui que també estem en un moment així complicat. Més.
I després, una mica el tema legal.
És un tema que ens ha portat problemes i que ens l'hem repensat molt i que des del principi ens l'hem qüestionat i hem anat fent.
I patim molt.
I buscant la solució dient a cada situació i a veure com ens anàvem trobant.
Clar, volem fer la difusió de coses que nosaltres no tenim, de moltes coses que nosaltres no tenim els drets d'explotació. Llavors el que vam fer és com que l'accés als ítems varia una mica depenent d'aquests drets, qui els té. I quan cedim imatges sempre fem signar cartes de responsabilitat, si ens diuen que només és per investigació. Llavors la diferència d'accés és que en els casos que tenim, que pensem que és domini públic, hi ha el visor de PDF o el visor d'imatge i la descàrrega directa. En canvi, quan nosaltres tenim els drets o sabem de qui són o tenim el permís, només deixem el visor. I la gent pot demanar a partir de formulari la descàrrega, llavors nosaltres ja investiguem o demanem que ens demanin el permís o fem el que toqui. Hi ha uns casos, sobretot d'uns reculls de premsa que teníem, que són de diferents mitjans, que aquí només tenim la miniatura i llavors també va a petició. Llavors aquesta seria la versió més restrictiva, que només tens la miniatura i el formulari de petició. Llavors allà, clar, això ja genera un e-mail que tu preguntes i per què ho vols i no sé què, que ja preguntes una mica i investigues l'ús que farà l'usuari d'aquest document. I ja estem.
Algú vol fer alguna pregunta?
Soc Imma Navarro, de l'Arxiu Nacional. A veure, nosaltres fa cosa d'un any i mig, 2 anys, hem posat un punt d'accés a les nostres cerques, que és el col·labora. L'arribada de peticions per col·laborar és ingent, és diària. Vull dir que després s'ha de destinar personal per verificar que allò que t'estan dient és cert. Vull dir, és molt útil, però és molta feina.
I ens passava una mica això, la gent ens va ajudar moltíssim, però clar, després et generen una feina més per... Sí, ho sabem, però també sabem que tot el que demanem col·laboració és obrir-nos les portes.
I a vegades hi ha errades.
Sí, també.
El tema dels bombardejos de Lleida, és que això genera si les fotos són o no són de Centelles o no, és que hi havia més fotògrafs i tipus d'això.
Sí, que ens passa.
Només comentar aquest tema.
Molt bé, perfecte.
Molt bé, doncs moltes gràcies i ara aquí davant teniu cafè pel que ho necessiteu i anem cap a fer la visita a l'arxiu aquells que vulgueu fer-la. Moltes gràcies i ens veiem demà a les... Hi ha aquí Margalida, demà és a les 9:45, A 9:45 a la Biblioteca de Catalunya. Gràcies.